Hi, everyone. I'm Nick Bailey. I'm one of the co-founders of From Day One, which is a forum on corporate values. We're really looking forward to hosting today's webinar. But before I do, I wanted to share something special that we have for attendees of today's webinar. Our next monthly virtual conference, it's coming up on Wednesday, July 21st. It's entitled Diversity's Many Roles: How Mentors, Sponsors, and especially Allies can each play a part in inclusion. Thanks so much to our partner today, today's sponsor. We have some complimentary VIP tickets, and those are available for those who have joined today's webinar. That's you. I'm going to put a link in the chat right now. You're going to want to take advantage of this if you get a chance for free. The regular price for our conference ticket is $149. This link that's in chat right now will actually give you a free VIP ticket that'll get you into the whole day's activities. Just check your chat in the Zoom client, it should be on the bottom of your screen if you're on a desktop, and you'll see that link right now. So now on to today's webinar, the topic that focuses on military service members and veterans, as well as talent recruitment and acquisition best practices that best serve this unique population with transitions into civilian work. Our title for today's session is Matching Military Veterans with Your Need for Skilled Talent. Given our current workforce conditions, how can employers identify military skills that can be enhanced and aligned with their growing demand for workers with discipline, motivation, and willingness to learn? What's new in regard to talent acquisition in the diverse talent pool? For scouting, evaluating, onboarding, upskilling, and mentoring, plus what are some of the best practices to launch and manage apprenticeships for former service members? Our sponsor today is Fastport. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Fastport. Fastport is a software company that builds products to help civilians, underserved populations, and all military community members to find meaningful employment and apprenticeship training. We've served as U.S. Department of Labor industry intermediary to help create and enhance apprenticeship programs since 2018 and have helped 14,000 apprentices to date. Now, for a few quick logistical items, this webinar is being recorded. It's going to be available on demand right after the event. So you can look out for an email in about 24 hours with the link. That email will also have info on how you can get professional development credit. We're accredited by SHRM, that's SHRM, Society for Human Resource Management, and HRCI. And that's a very common question. The answer is you will get your credit hours sent to you about one day from today, middle of the day tomorrow. Look out as well for a written account of this conversation that's going to be on our website, fromday1.co, fromdayone.co. And at the top of the hour, we're going to begin a Q&A session. You can submit your questions anytime during the webinar using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So if you're in the Zoom client, just look at the bottom there. There's a Q&A. You can start your questions anytime during the webinar, but at the top of the hour, our moderator, Emily, will take a look at those and start posing those to our audience. So think of those questions as you enjoy the conversation today. Now, I'd like to introduce that moderator. It's Emily McCreary-Rees-Esponza. She's an independent writer and editor who writes about workplace culture, diversity and equity, and hiring. Her work has appeared in Fast Company and in her site, among others, and she's been syndicated on MSN, The Motley Fool, and many other publications, including From Day One. Emily, thanks so much, and over to you.
Thank you, Nick. I'm really happy to be here with everybody today. It's okay that you started by talking about high performers because I think everybody here on this panel qualifies. So I'm looking forward to chatting with everybody. Obviously, we're talking about recruiting military talent. Just for some context for those watching today, every year, 200,000 service members leave the military and enter civilian life. Many of them are looking to start brand new careers. Lots of companies are looking for better ways to serve our veterans. And the panelists today are not only veterans themselves, but they also serve fellow service members in their organization and are always looking for ways to improve. So let's get started. I'd like to go around and have each of you introduce yourself briefly and tell us just, a quick sentence or two about what you do in your organization. So let's start with Chuck. He's on my screen there at the bottom. Let's start with you, Chuck.
Thank you. So hello, everyone. Welcome today. My name is Chuck Kluball. I lead the Home Depot's military relations team. I've been with the company for right around 5 years after leaving the Army, where I was infantryman for 7. And I look forward to chatting with you all a little bit today about our apprenticeship programs that we have, and then also the support we provide for military families.
Let's go to Jacqueline.
Awesome. Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Jacqueline Jarl. I go by JJ. I lead Stryker's military recruiting program. I have been at Stryker for over 7 years, and in this capacity, in this department, I should say, for the last 4 years, and leading the program for the last year and a half. Really looking forward to sharing what I have learned from building the program from the ground up, and hopefully it will provide some meaningful insight for you to help our veterans as well.
Let's go with Dave next.
Hello, and thank you. I'm glad that I'm in the right actual panel. I was concerned there for a minute. I also am a former Army infantryman, and I have served in multiple capacities since then with a Fortune 400 to build a program that hired 10,000 veterans in 5 years. In the last, since 2016, I have served as executive director with Fastport, and I lead a team that actually is contracted with the Department of Labor to build registered apprenticeship programs across all industry sectors, along with the team that works with Purdue University for cybersecurity and a technical assistance grant across the entire nation for registered apprenticeship work-based learning, with an emphasis on veteran and transitioning military and their families.
Thanks, Dave. Let's go to Chris, and then we'll finish with Greg.
Chris Cortez, I'm Vice President for Military Affairs at Microsoft, served 33 years in the Marines. In September, I will have had 15 years at Microsoft. We stood up what's called Military Affairs at Microsoft in 2014. And I look forward to sharing with you some of the many wonderful things that Military Affairs does. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Greg, please go ahead.
Okay. All right. I wasn't sure if I had to wait for your cue or not.
Go for it. Yeah, no, don't wait on me.
Thank you. Yeah, no worries. My name is Greg Rivera. I am the military talent acquisition lead for Booz Allen Hamilton. I've been at Booz Allen for 11 years, former Navy supply officer, been out for quite a while. But in my time, in the 20 years since I've been off active duty, I've been heavily immersed in the talent acquisition field, primarily helping veterans as they're looking to make the transition out into the real world, if you will. I've been in my role here at Booz Allen for just short of 2 years as the military TA lead. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Let's just jump in and get started. I want to start at a high level first and just find out how you think about, in general, designing a program that supports service members who are transitioning to civilian careers. So what's at the heart of what you're doing? What kind of ideas are top of mind as you're thinking about the programs that you're designing in your organizations? And we'll start with Greg on this one. So we'll come right back to you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think the biggest thing is making sure that, as an organization, you understand how military men and women can fit into your organization. That's first and foremost. You have to educate both not only your business partners, within the business, but you also have to educate folks within talent acquisition. I'm often myself, I'm talking to our talent acquisition team and having them understand resumes and where folks are coming in and the different nuances, if you will, of the service and the differences of where people have been and what they've done. I think that's extremely important. It's that we also utilize that buy, borrow, build talent kind of philosophy. Buying it is going out and us engaging with folks and letting them understand who we are as an organization. That's important too, and where they can fit in. Establishing third-party relationships. We have a tremendous relationship with HOH, Hire Heroes and their corporate fellowship program, with MSSA, with paid vendors as well. And then building that talent, setting them up for success, making sure that you're giving them the tools for them to be successful within your organization, not just in their daily jobs, but you got to understand that, especially those who are newly transitioning, that they've got a lot going on in their minds, and it's a transition. With Chris, for instance, 33 plus years in the Marine Corps, someone that's been long tenured in the service, they need to be able to understand and have resources for them to kind of assimilate into your organization. So those are just a few, and I know folks are going to have other opportunity, have other points of view as well. So I'll stop there.
Thanks, Greg. Dave, could you talk about a little bit about how you think about it at Fastport?
Well, and this comes from two perspectives. One, I was with a company called JB Hunt Transport and built the Hunt's Heroes program from the ground up. And like Chris, 2014, we started engaging in military talent and learning a lot of things real fast. So yeah, we all have calluses from that time frame. From that, what I would say, and my other perspective, because in the role I'm in now, I work with about 70 different organizations, associations, employers that engage in military hiring platforms and programs, and I provide consulting services to those folks, those who are actually trying to engage in a meaningful way. The first thing is that there's a big difference between military friendly and military ready. Okay, everybody will say they're military friendly. That doesn't mean they're military ready. Greg just touched on this a little bit. I think Chris will reaffirm this, and I'm sure Chuck will too. And I'm sure JJ, everyone on the panel will. I'll say this, that the culture that you provide is important if you want to not only just recruit, but more importantly, retain this level of talent. And what an employer should understand is that word of mouth in this community is more important than $1 million worth of advertising. If you will take care of and create a culture, i.e., an employee resource group for veterans that integrates both veterans and civilians, and you have an engagement strategy that connects veterans who are veterans in your company and veterans of military service with transitioning military folks. Because the danger point for everyone, and this is, I can't stress this enough, in transitions, the first 6 months. I don't care if they're a field grade officer. I don't care if they're a sergeant major. As a matter of fact, the higher ranking they are, the more danger that is, because the more disenfranchised they're going to be in that first transition. Because they're used to being able to manage things at a whim that they will not be allowed to do. So if you need to create a culture that helps them assimilate to your culture, once they understand the landscape, you will be amazed at what those folks will do for you and how they will create a culture of problem solving that you may not have had in certain areas, and how other people will follow them to you if you give them that kind of platform.
And if I can caveat on top of that, I think Dave brought some great points about being military ready, and every transition is a little different. So the job market's different now than it was when I got out. In fact, the job market now is different than it was 6 months ago because of everything we went through. And even now you'll say, I hear it's a good thing for some people because it's definitely a job seekers market right now. There are companies that are hungry for talent. They're hungry for the skills the military is going to bring. But there's also a lot of the numbers around from the Department of Labor that showed, just like Dave said, that first 6 months is really telling. For a while there, it was almost 60% of veterans left their first job in a year. I think that number's gotten better. That was from about 5 years ago, I believe. That number's gotten a little better, but the transition is still a culture shock. And just like he was saying, we find that success is a combination of two. There's matching the skills to a good opportunity. And we were all joking around before the call started. A lot of us are infantry, which if you type that into an MOS translator, it tells you security guard. I don't think any of us are currently security guards. But like I went into project management and supply chain. Then I moved over to operations process, and now I'm in HR and talent acquisition and in military relations. There's a skill match there, so you can have a good skill match, but then there's the onboarding and the culture match and the people match that has to happen. And I was super lucky. My second day with the company, I crossed paths with another veteran who was a Marine infantryman as well, just happened to work out. And we became each other's kind of support network. And then I met other veterans. They became my support network. And then it grows because it is a strong culture shock for many of the veterans getting out. This will be the first time they do job interviews. It'll be the first time they'll write a resume. It'll be the first time they sit through an actual onboarding with a company that they don't show up and they don't have their entire day or their entire onboarding process planned out for them. It'll be the first time that they have to deal with different type of work environments. I mean, we work remote in the military. When you think about it, if you're alone, unafraid out there with a radio, separate from your command. You are in a remote situation, but it's different than working with partners via Teams and Zoom and WebEx and everything else. And so it's a lot. And it's also one of the only times in your life where you'll go through a job change, potentially a relocation, healthcare change, education changes, potentially your family's getting uprooted. It's a entire life change versus just a job change. So companies that are prepared to provide support for that life-changing event, not just a job-changing event, are going to also see higher retention. And then because of that higher retention, they're going to see higher performance out of the veterans they're bringing in.
I don't know if you guys saw, but I was scribbling notes furiously because you all brought up really, really good points. I like the language that you use, Dave, about being military friendly versus being military ready. Greg, you mentioned how important it is to train HR and talent acquisition to actually read a resume, understand what they're looking at, know how it translates to the skills that you're looking for. JJ, I know you do a lot of this at Stryker, making sure your talent acquisition and recruiting arms do this. Could you talk about how you approach that at Stryker?
Yeah, definitely. So from an internal education standpoint, and this is really, really important, some of the other panelists brought up, in the beginning, we, went out and went to the career fairs, and we brought in a lot of different talent, right? So we were able to get a lot of veteran and transitioning military applicants, but all of that effort doesn't really mean anything unless your recruiters and your hiring managers put them through the process. So what we realized from the numbers that we were tracking internally is that, we don't really have an issue on getting the applicants. We do have an issue with converting them throughout our interview process. And so, in 2019, we decided that it was necessary for us to build what we call military talent familiarization curriculum. And, given my Army background, I kind of started building what we call Military 101 from a very foundational, somebody who has never really heard of anything in the military other than what they see on TV and movies. So it's, just the basics, the rank structure, right? The different services, the different components. What's the difference between active and reserve and guard? So we started building these curriculums that are housed in our online learning management system. So anybody has access to them. So in the very beginning, we built Military 101 and we would run almost like classes, so in-person classes. And we started building other curriculums. So we had, Military 201, Military 202. So it just depending on what the business needs. And of course, you need your stakeholders' input on this. So your recruiters, your HR business partners, your hiring managers, anybody who sits on an interview, kind of what they do or do not understand about military talent, that's something that you can put into your curriculum. And then on top of that, since I, have influence over our talent acquisitions team, right now, every single new recruiter that comes into Stryker, it's mandatory for them to go through that training. And then being the talent advisors to the hiring managers, they can also recommend the training to hiring managers. Now, we've even gone so far as to set up a customized training for specific managers. For example, if you're a manager hiring for field service technicians, you probably are not going to care too much about your JMOs who are getting out, right? Because again, you're looking for technician talent. So it's a little bit different, and you can tailor the training depending on who's interested in hiring military talent. And not every, it's not going to be a good fit for everybody, right? Military talent is not going to be a good fit for every single department. I think some of the other panelists talked about knowing what your company needs and where, like, this is what I call it, right? Kind of where your sweet spots are for bringing in military talent. Yes, but then on the education side too, I think the internal education is great, but you do also need to educate externally. So that's your actual candidates, and let them know, hey, like the majority of the people that you're going to be talking with are not going to have military experience, right? I think only we're close to like 7% of the population are veterans. So more likely than not, your candidates need some education as well, as far as how to talk about their experience in terms that the hiring managers and the recruiters can understand. So the education really is both, runs on both sides.
At what point in the hiring process are you working with the candidates themselves on that training?
So from the very beginning, personally, like when I see them at a career fair, generally it's like a 5-minute meet and greet, but at the military career fairs, I will spend some time like kind of going through their resume and giving them some pointers. Call it unsolicited advice, if you would. But I feel like, I'm not doing anybody any service by letting them walk away not knowing what they should change on their resume, to put their best foot forward. So I do that from the very beginning, like when I first meet the candidate. And then we do also have I know I think it was Dave that talked about it, our employee resource group. So Stryker's Veterans Association. So we do have a group of people that I can kind of direct candidates to, depending on their own interests and the locations that they want to pursue. So I can kind of connect them with different people within our network here at Stryker to more specifically teach them about that specific location and what the hiring managers at those locations are looking for. Because every single one of our locations, is a little bit different. So we do have that group of network that we can direct candidates to, but it really does need to start from the very beginning, before they even apply, before they submit their resume.
You mentioned career fairs, so let's talk about actually drawing candidates in. So career fairs are an option, but I think in general, a lot of veterans may not be aware of the types of civilian opportunities, where to go, what companies offer ERGs and programs like this. So how are you getting the word out among transitioning service members to come and apply, or to come to a recruiting event like that? And anybody can take this question first, whoever wants to jump in. Okay, I see Greg, you took yourself off mute. So
yeah, you got me, huh? I think the biggest thing for us is we are fortunate enough to have within Booz Allen, we have a pretty good candidate attraction team that we work with quite extensively. So we're doing different type of what we call engage posts, where we're talking about things that we're doing internally as a firm. And within Booz Allen, we have a military talent community. So within our candidate tracking system, we have a military talent community. So we utilize that community to just update folks on what we're doing internally within our space. When I mean our space, our military talent acquisition space, and just keeping our folks, because for us, it's people in the pipeline. We've got people that are available now. We got people that are available 24 months from now. So we want to keep them engaged through that, and that's another thing. If you're starting a program, you got to understand that process and that timeline. Folks are going to start looking at as many as 24 months in advance to their transition date, and they're going to be doing various different things, whether they're upskilling, whether they, getting their resume together, of course, fine tuning their interviewing skills, learning about business and how they can fit in and where they can fit in. So, as we are engaging with those individuals, we're just making sure that we're keeping them, we are keeping them fully engaged on what's going on within the firm, and just giving them that pulse check. But that's one of the ways for us that we do.
JJ, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, definitely. So we, same thing with Greg, we do have a talent attraction team that we work very closely with. We run multiple digital campaigns through all of the different resources that are available to us, whether it's LinkedIn, Google Ads, or any other thing. And we also have a page on gijobs.com as well. So there are a lot of different avenues that you can advertise yourself. And for someone like Stryker, it is a little bit harder because we're not a household name like many of the other panelists, right? Many of their companies, like everybody knows who Microsoft is, everybody knows Home Depot, right? But not everybody knows Stryker, because Stryker is we're very niche. I would say we're a medical device. So unless you have a family that work here, or you're somehow in like the medical field, coming out of the military, you probably don't know who Stryker is. I do get a lot of like, oh, Stryker, is that the vehicle? Right, when I go to career fairs. So that's kind of how I know that there is branding that needs to be done to the military community if you are a company that is not well known or not like a household name. And there are different ways of doing that. I would say I'm certainly not the expert in branding, but that's why you need to leverage like a talent attraction team. And if you don't have somebody, on your team or in your company that do that, that is something that you can outsource. Many different companies do outsourcing, including or do branding for companies, including specific to the military talent community. So that's something that you guys can look into if it is something that you feel is lacking in your program.
Do you know of any? Have you worked with any third parties who have done branding for you guys? I'm sure.
So we have not.
Would love to know like who they could go to.
Yep. We have not partnered. Right now, we just do it all in-house because we have that capability in-house. But we have spoken with many different companies to, like, when we're deciding whether or not we want to do this in-house or if we want to outsource. So like GI Jobs is one. They do programmatics as well. I think military.com and their parent company, I believe, is Monster. They also have a portion that they do military media, digital media, and things like that. And then, of course, you have the third party who will kind of give you a package. There are multiple different third party who will, like, okay, they work with Indeed as well as GI Jobs, as well as military.com, right? So there are different companies that kind of will give you a more well-rounded package depending on the audience that you're trying to reach. And I don't have the names off the top of my head, but I can definitely send it to you, Emily, and then you can send it out to everyone in attendance.
Cool, thanks. Dave, did you want to jump in on this one?
And thanks, Emily. There's a couple things I want to point out. First off, Greg had mentioned hiring our heroes before, and you're talking about affiliation with organizations. And I know that at Home Depot and Microsoft and others, we've had a relationship with hiring our heroes for many years. In fact, we're talking about resumes a minute ago. The technical side or the technology side of our company developed what was called the resume engine.org, which would allow a transitioning military member to literally put in their rank, MOS, the ribbon rack, schools they've attended, and in about 15 minutes or so from a smartphone, have the core of a HR ready resume developed with tens of thousands of bullet comments they can plug and play as they go. Also for the transition or for spouses or their family members, there's mycareerspark.org, which does the same kind of functionality. But mentioning HOH, affiliation with organizations like Hiring Our Heroes or with like Centurion Military Alliance. Centurion Military Alliance in next week is going to be hosting a massive event at Fort Bliss that's going to have a couple thousand attendees who are job seekers. Okay. I also Hire Heroes USA. It doesn't charge anything for a partnership, and I recommend you check them out because they source folks as well. I've always been hesitant, and this goes back to my experience since 2014 and having a budget and having military hiring teams, at spending a whole lot of money to go to a job fair for, somebody will charge you $2,000 to have a booth to set up. I'm not always certain that their heart's in the right place, especially when military transition, and most of the time it's not, in my opinion. But at the same breath, you go to like I spent. Greg knows Grant Hegner well, so do I. Grant and I sat side by side on stage in Okinawa for 4 days, talking to 1,000 potential transitioning military. There are a lot of sources out there that doesn't have to cost you a lot of money. You want to go after the transition military and their families more so than the old veterans like me, because I'm talking about dollars spent. If you're going after the veterans who've been out for a long period of time, that's a hit or miss by location. Transition military is a more effective way to spend your dollars. It just is. The other thing is, and I think Greg hit on this too, and I want to reinforce this, and very much for all the HR professionals and anyone in the business of hiring or trying to sell a military ready program. You have to get the hierarchy to understand that this is not the fish you're going to jump in the boat in the next 10 minutes. You're not going to get 7,000 hires tomorrow, especially if you're developing a program. You are talking to people who are up to 24 months out from the transition. This is a long play. You must engage a CRM. We used to use Salesforce and other things that we would keep contact 6, 7, 8 times in the last 6 months before transition, and up to 15 times total to the 6 months in employment with us. That's to avoid that massive transition that Chuck was talking about that used to exist. You can improve retention for these folks dramatically simply by maintaining contact. JJ's Military 101 is an excellent tool. We developed something similar to that. I don't know as complete as that, but we engaged in every chance. We tried to provide a mentorship that pairs with the management team. And the mentorship is a veteran that has some experience within the company. So that way they can translate things to those transitioning people. So I would strongly suggest that you link in with those folks. And as far as providing branding, sourcing, and things, Fastport is not we won't provide branding, but we can help guide you in those spots. But I'm not going to tie up the rest of this with that. If you want to reach out to me, I'm going to post my information. I'm also going to post the resumeengine.org and my career spark in the chat.
You're on mute, Emily.
Thank you. Very briefly, I'm going to kick it back over to Nick for just a moment. And then when we resume again, I want to talk to Chris about Microsoft's Military Affairs program. So Nick, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again. Just wanted to remind anyone that's joining the webinar in midstream that we're from day one. Today, we're exploring matching military veterans with your need for skilled talent. The sponsor for today's webinar is Fastport. As a reminder, you can submit your questions at any time. We're going to answer as many as we can during the Q&A session, which is at the top of the hour. At the bottom of your Zoom client, if you're on a desktop, you'll see a little Q&A button. You can submit your questions there, and Emily will field those right at the top of the hour. And also at the top of the hour, we'll share another link to our upcoming virtual conference for July for you. Back to you, Emily.
Thanks. Okay, so Chris, who is at Microsoft, you guys have just an incredibly rich, not only military affairs program, but you also have the MSSA, which is the Microsoft Software and Systems Academy. Tell us all about that and how it works and honestly how big it is, because it's a really large, effective program.
Well, thanks, Emily. And I'm going to try to link a few of the messages that you've just heard. When you listen to Dave, he talked about 2014 and, standing up these new programs. MSSA goes back to 2013. And in those days, the veteran unemployment rate was out of control. There were very few programs available for transitioning military. The truckers union was one of the first, pipe fitters came along, and then others. And the people that are representing these companies today are doing wonderful things for those that have served. So you said, Emily, in the very beginning, hey, 200,000 military people leave service every year. Well, we looked at that, and the fact that in the technology industry at Microsoft, there are thousands of jobs unfilled any given day because there aren't enough people out there with a tech background. Back in those days, code.org was saying there are 500,000 tech jobs unfilled in America for the same reason. There aren't enough people that are skilled. So we stood up MSSA, the Microsoft Software and Systems Academy, in 2013. Think of it as a 17-week technology boot camp where you come either through a transition and you come through our program while you're participating in the Skillbridge program, which allows you to go through these kinds of programs when you're within the last 6 months of your service, or whether you're a veteran. Go through the 17-week boot camp. Doesn't matter what your military MOS specialty was. You could be a truck driver. You could be a cook, a medic. We take them all. And at the end of this 17 weeks, you have the blocking and tackling that it takes to go to work, no kidding, in a technology company. As a matter of fact, we have over 750 companies that had hired from this program. One of the big things that happened in February, I did a LinkedIn post, and the announcement was Microsoft is going to fully fund this program. If you go back to 2013 and you went through this program, you had to give up 4 months of your GI Bill. But now, starting in February, that it's fully funded, you keep those 4 months of your GI Bill and you use them or give them to your spouse or give them to your kids. That's a big deal. And once we did go fully funded, wow, did we have a long line of people that wanted to get into the program. So let me tie this into your last question about how do you let people know about your program? And so for us, MSSAOps@Microsoft.com's got all of our programs there. You can go there, find out how you can apply, when the next courses are going to open up and so forth. We also participate in job fairs. We're also connected to each branch of the military has a career skills program manager, a CSP. And so we update them continuously on what's coming up next. And we stay very connected with them. We're connected with the Veterans Administration. When we announced that we were fully funding the program, they put it in their newsletter. And within 24 hours, we had over 6,000 queries about the program. We do monthly calls. We pick one day a month and we'll do a call in the morning, a call in the afternoon. And you can be in the US or you can be serving in any other country, and we'll answer your questions about MSSA. People that go through the program have friends, so we get a lot of interest through referrals. The graduates from the program have their own social network, and they also talk about the program. And we obviously, like all the companies here, work with HOH, the Service Academy Career Conferences, and others that reach out and touch our military, and we all talk about our program. So that, in a nutshell, is the Microsoft Software and Systems Academy. I think one of the things that we'll talk about later is what happened when all of us had to change the way we did business when COVID hit. But with that, Emily, I'll turn it back over to you.
What a beautifully constructed answer. I want you to write essays, Chris, of like, you just hit all the points. David, do you have something to add to what Chris said?
Yeah, hey, real quick, and another way to get your message out, and another way, a tool that's very effective in recruitment and retention for the military in transition is through registered apprenticeship. Most folks, I know the folks on this panel are aware of this, or on the most part are, but many are not aware that if you are attached to a Department of Labor registered apprenticeship, that your transitioning service members who are GI Bill eligible can draw a monthly housing allowance while going to work for you and during the entire length of the apprenticeship window. So what that really means is averages across the country about $1,500 a month to that veteran and their family over and top what you're paying. So imagine you're talking to Sergeant Dave Harrison at leaving the 82nd Airborne, and you're wanting me to take a job in Browningsville, Pennsylvania, and I'm looking at transitioning or staying where I'm at and trying to make a decision. And I can draw an MHA allowance for Browningsville, which could be $1,400, $1,500, $1,600 for as long as I choose to, or to the length of the apprenticeship. It reduces some over time. That on top of the salary, that's a recruiting and retention boom. And it doesn't mean you're necessarily going to beat everybody else in space, because a lot of folks have this now who've been in this space for a while. But it's hard to compete with somebody who doesn't have it, unless you're giving away the MSAA for fully funded, like Chris and his group are, which has always led the way on these kind of programs. And my hat's off to them. But part of that is by participating in that, you automatically can post all your jobs at DOL, at the apprenticeship.gov DOL website for free. And it will draw from the NLX, so you don't have to update every position as soon as it changes. And that's just the connectivity that already exists by participating in the Registered Apprenticeship Program. And I can speak on that privately with anybody, because that's what we do.
Thanks, Dave. I want to talk a little bit more about Microsoft's program. Specifically, Chris, you mentioned that not only might these people be hired right into Microsoft, you also work with I think 750 plus partners, one of which is Booz Allen Hamilton, represented by Greg here today. So Greg, could you talk about hiring program participants out of Microsoft's program?
Yeah, no, thank you, Emily. One thing for us, we're a technology-driven company, and there's a segment of our business when you look at some of the specialties that are within the military, primarily in the digital space, where whether it's cloud developers or software various different types of software developers. You don't have a lot of those individuals coming out. So we've got an upskilling program within Booz Allen, but we've leaned heavily on MSSA and having the ability to engage with their candidates through the different cohorts that they do. We take part in their job fairs. Just in the last several months alone, we've hired I think it's just a tick over 24 folks that have gotten MSSA certifications. So it's been a tremendous resource for us. Again, it's allowing us to get folks that want to learn, want to upskill. I'll take that over somebody that's been doing it for 10 plus years, because those individuals that are wanting to learn and upskill, they've got a little fire in their belly. They got a little chip on their shoulder to prove themselves. And, military men and women already have the leadership, the work ethic, the discipline, the integrity. They have that drive to always want to be the best and do the best they possibly can. And, being able to have those individuals kind of at our fingertips, those that Microsoft doesn't hire, of course, is definitely has been a benefit for us. I think JJ, I think you all take part in it as well, don't you?
We do, yeah. We thank you, Chris, by the way, because we are a benefitor of the MSSA program as well as an employer partner, and it is a super easy website to use. It's super user friendly, and you do have access to pretty much every single one of the trainees every single service member that's going through their program. I believe it's also open to veterans as well, right? Not just service members. Yeah.
Yes.
So every single person who's being trained, you have access to their resume, and you can reach out to them, as early as soon as their resume is posted, you can reach out to them. So it's a great program. And I think the way of the world, right? Everything has a PCB in it nowadays. And even your test engineers, they're going to have to write some kind of code, and they're going to have to know the basic IT skills and the basic coding skills, which the MSSA kind of teaches them. So it's a great program, and I encourage you to contact Microsoft about it if you do not know about it yet.
Hey, JJ and Emily, I just want to say that when we started this program, we never intended that every one of the people that went through the program would get hired in Microsoft. The reality is our batting average is about 22%. I believe we're going to do better because we've made some really radical changes. But our goal always from the very beginning was to get 100%. We're not quite there. We're about 98, but 100% of those that go to this program, to get them employed, get them a good job, get them a career in the technology industry. Thanks.
98% is still pretty darn good.
I think so.
Chris, can you briefly tell anybody who is watching, if they're interested in maybe becoming hiring out of MSSA, how can they do that? Whom should they contact, and is there a process to go through for that?
Well, a gentleman by the name of Dan Shoemate is the one that drives the hiring program, and he's the one that connects with all these companies. And I'll give you his email address here real quick. And if you connect with Dan, and if your company wants to hire, he's the guy. So it's Dan, D-A-N, Shoemate. It is all one word, S-H-U-M-A-T-E, all one word, Dan Shoemate at outlook.com. Dan does a phenomenal job. He has his own virtual job fairs with BAH and with, Stryker, with all the companies that work with us. And, during this pandemic, Dan has played a key role in continuing to try to get people jobs. Remember, when COVID hit, all companies got hit hard. Budgets, headcount. And so Dan stepped up and did everything he could to try to keep the program moving and get people hired.
Chris, you brought this up a little bit earlier about everyone having to transition to a virtual environment in the last year, or hybrid, at best. I'd like for, I guess all of you have had to transition to virtual in some way, to talk about that transition and how that opened up opportunities or even limited the way you were able to engage with transitioning service members and their families as well. So partners or spouses who also needed employment opportunities. So anybody can start this one off.
Emily, I'd like to start because this was a critical moment for us and for MSSA. When we started this in 2013, I can now say it, we were old think. I was a dinosaur. It had to be in a classroom. You had to have a professor. So we went with two different universities, St. Martin's University out of the state of Washington, and then Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in every other state in the union where we had one of these cohorts. And we were in 12 different locations with a total of 14 cohorts. So imagine from 2013 to when COVID hit, you're doing it with a professor, 17 weeks, one person, 20 to 25 students, and COVID hits. This is a Skillbridge program, an Office of the Secretary of Defense, OSD Skillbridge programs that are designed to prepare military members for jobs when they become civilians. There were several Skillbridge programs when COVID hit that went away because they didn't have the capability to go virtual. We happened to be in a 1-week pause in our program, a break, if you will, when it hit. And we had 5 work days to try to figure this out. So we decided, okay, we're going to go virtual. Let's see how this works. And of course, there were some bumps in the road, but the program continued on. And what this also forced us to look at is, do you go with a university approach? Or if you stay virtual, are you better off if you go with a company that was built and has done this for a very long time and teach people technology? Microsoft has long time learning partners that did this virtually. So we tested it out in February with 2 pilots, and we called it V2, MSSA V2, version 2. and it worked brilliantly. And so just this week, July 7th, we started the whole new program. We have 4 cohorts. They're all virtual, and we see us doing this into the future. Here's the beauty, one of the windfalls from doing it this way. In those 4 cohorts where we have 60 participants, remember, the maximum locations was 12, and we had 14 classrooms because some of them were doubled up. For these 4 cohorts that just started this week, we're on 34 military installations because we can reach out and touch them virtually. In addition, 4 countries, people that are stationed in Japan, Belgium, Italy, and Germany are able to participate. So we see the future staying virtual because we see that we can reach out and touch so many more people. And it's a real windfall for us. There you go.
Chuck, I know that you support military spouses, partners. You make a point to do that. Could you talk about ways that you go about that? And also, does virtual factor into that? You know, military families are quite used to being mobile. So how does that translate to a service member transitioning out of service?
So yeah, that's a good question. And then also similar to how Chris was talking about, we also were had to really quickly go through and change our fellowship programs off the bat. So for our transitioning fellowship programs, we did take them virtual, but also our business is one where we can't make stores, we can't make supply chain buildings virtual. Like somebody has to be there. We have to have leaders on site, associates on site. We can do everything we can to make the environment as safe as we can, but we cannot take everything virtual. So we kind of went with a hybrid approach. We do have some programs where they were still in a warehouse or in a services branch, working physically with our associates, following the most up-to-date safety guidelines we could get. And then we also took a lot of them virtual, and we benefited from some of the successes that Chris talked about, right? We were able to engage, like we also had fellows who were in Japan when they started the fellowship and they were transitioning back to Atlanta, Georgia, and like halfway through they did the big move and then they're in Atlanta, but we were able to support that because of virtual. Our military spouses also have a very unique challenge, because like you mentioned, the constant move, PCSs, everything else is one of the largest cited issues when it comes to military spouses maintaining long-term careers. We've kind of tackled that in a couple different ways. The first one we have is we have a transfer program that we have across our locations in the United States. Home Depot has over 2,000 locations across the United States between our stores, supply chain, and different regional offices. So we have a transfer program that enables military spouses, if they're at one location, I always use the example, they're from Valdosta, Georgia at Moody Air Force Base, and then they get moved over to San Diego area for one of the bases in that area. We have stores and locations across that. We can provide a transfer that enables them to take their career from literally all the way across the country there as well. We also have a new one that we just worked on this last year and just launched. We have a leave of absence program for military spouses. So if you do get sent to Germany or Belgium or Italy, and you work for a company that's not an international organization, they can't support that, which we do not have offices in Europe. So we're able to put you on LOA though, so that when you go over there, when you return, you're able to reactivate your employment with the Home Depot and then find a job at the new location that you're stationed in, whether it be Hawaii or New York or wherever that may be. Virtual has come into play with that one. There are some nuances with virtual, and we always kind of talk about like difference between virtual and remote style roles. So right now, most of our non-field roles are still in a virtual or remote setting. But I didn't have my background on, you'd be staring at a wall in our house right now. So where we can, we try to accommodate that virtual move. Now individual states and different tax laws and stuff become involved in that one. So that's one where HR is critical. There's some roles in some parts of the company that we are able to virtually relocate people across the US. Where we're not, we're a values-driven company where one of our values is taking care of our people. That's where the HR team really does some heavy lifting, because maybe the team that they're currently on can't support that move, but another team probably will be able to. So we will partner across our organization to find the right matches, to find roles that have similar skill correlations and similar type opportunities that we can then work together with our HR partners on where we can. Like I said, the beauty of it being with 2,000 locations across the United States, I believe it was something around 80% of our stores are within 30 miles of a military base. Now, we all know which ones probably aren't. Example, Fort Polk and Fort Leonard Wood, aka Lost in the Woods, for those of us that were familiar with those bases. But for the most part, we have opportunities around that we can look at. So we do everything we can to accommodate the mobile needs of the military spouses. And then also, when it comes to those tax and local state challenges that can come up when it comes to balancing different state entities and filing and everything else, we also work to advocate externally with our government relations team and the states to encourage them to create military family friendly programs and policies within the state, even for things like licensure transfer that maybe that impact our business, but it does impact military spouses. I think about teachers and nurses when they try to move across state lines. We try to work with different government entities to help them create military family friendly laws and legislation that support that.
That's great. Very comprehensive. And the way you engage with that need. Dave, did you want to jump in on this one?
Yes, I do. There's an amazing opportunity that's come out of the COVID transition and remote working scenarios. There are a few companies that very early on figured out that there's a whole talent, there's a population of talent out there that was untapped. Active duty military spouses, if you can find a way to have them work remotely, you will have a dedicated workforce that will stay with you for a long term. And there are companies that have shifted from call centers in other places that now are engaging military spouses stationed in Germany and in Italy and in Okinawa, et cetera. And think of this. If you can give somebody a work from home opportunity that's in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and their spouse who's in active duty gets transferred to Joint Base Lewis McChord across the country up in Washington, and they can maintain their job with you, all they have to, because they can do it remotely, you're going to keep those folks for a very, very long time. We've had some programs recently, especially with our freight brokerage, National Standard Apprenticeship, and some others that have pivoted just to be able to take advantage of that population and the fact that the recruiting points are very easily there. Once you engage that population, you can work through the TAP offices, business service managers, those kind of folks. HOH engages military spouses on a regular basis, as well as does the other organizations we've all mentioned previously on this conversation. But you get into that population and you provide them a real opportunity. You're going to serve your organization very well for the long term.
I think that's something that so many employers are realizing and are having to come to terms with, not just for retaining veteran or military spouse talent, is someone will employ them remotely. So they will leave your organization if you're not offering that. So I think employers of all kinds are having to really make sure they're offering as many remote opportunities as possible. We're at the top of the hour, so we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to kick it back over to Nick, and we'll be back in a moment.
Thanks so much. Thanks to all of you who are participating in this webinar today, matching military veterans with your need for skilled talent. Thanks again to our sponsor today, Fastport. And once again, in case you missed it at the top of the hour, I'm going to share something special that we have for those who are attending today's webinar. That's you. Our next monthly virtual conference is next Wednesday, July 21st. It's about diversity's many roles, how mentors, sponsors, and allies each play a part in inclusion. Thanks to today's sponsor, we're able to offer a complimentary VIP ticket to everyone that joined today's webinar. Again, that's you. These are normally $149. You definitely want to grab one of these while you can. I'm placing that link in the chat again right now. Also, there's always lots of messages asking when this amazing discussion will be available as an on-demand video to watch again or share. The answer is very soon. The link will be in the email. You'll get that tomorrow. That email that you get tomorrow will also have your SHRM and HRCI credit info. So with all of that out of the way, at this time, we're going to take some questions from our audience. That's you. They're in the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. If you've already submitted them, we're going to start looking at those now. Or if you haven't, now's a great time to submit your questions. And over to Emily for the Q&A section. Thanks again.
Thanks. And I noticed that JJ, you were going to add something right before we broke. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to jump in, and maybe you're going to talk about military spouses if you want to jump in now.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add on your, Skillbridge or corporate fellowship opportunities. These are internships that are, offered by the government. They're free for the companies. And much like all of the other companies that have done it, we did cancel a lot of them last year because we didn't really know how to go remote, if it would be effective going remote. Are we giving our transitioning military and spouses the right kind of culture exposure to our company, right? The last thing that we wanted to do is to bring somebody on and then not actually give them that full experience, giving that, we have to be remote and they're just sitting in their office at their house, instead of experiencing kind of the full Stryker, employee experience. So we did have to talk with many of our leaders and our stakeholders. And we do have several spouses that work for us full time that gave us, really good ideas. So a part of our, obviously, Stryker, again, a little bit different business model than I think everybody here. Our customer base, so our clientele, like we sell to hospitals and surgery centers. So we already had a very large field-based employee population. So technically, they're not like fully remote roles, but they're field-based. So that's something to consider moving forward because, everyone's going remote or everyone's going field-based. So if you can't bring somebody on to a location, and we do still have roles that need to be, on site. We're a manufacturing company as well. We manufacture, our R&D team needs to design in the building. And then our manufacturing obviously needs to manufacture in the building, and then supply chain, same thing as what Chuck talked about. So there are going to be roles that cannot be remote or cannot be field-based. But if you kind of think about your business model, like Hilton, I think has a very great model with spouses and their customer service center. So if it is possible, that is one way to make sure that you get high quality talent out of the military, active duty and spouse or dependents, as well as the retention part of it. I know many of the panelists mentioned retention. Retention is going to be an issue in the future. Now that everybody wants to be remote and everybody, kind of wants to work from home. And so that is something to think about. And a good way to kind of test that out is through all of these internship programs that the government offers. So don't forget about those. I know we're going to go into Q&A, so I'm not going to kind of belabor the point, but don't forget about the internships. They are free for you. It literally is like no risk for your company to jump into these internship programs and figure out whether or not it's the right talent for you.
I'm glad you brought that up, JJ, the internship program opportunity. And yes, we are going to jump into Q&A, and we have a lot of really good questions. I want to start with one from Cheryl. She asks, what are some of the ways your military ERGs support veterans once they're hired or have transitioned, and how can we continue to support their success? Chuck, do you want to take this one first?
Absolutely. So great question once again. And I guess there's two sides to how you can provide the best support. There was a couple of questions about this one previously as well. The first one is encouraging associates to self-identify as veterans from the get-go. We did some work with that to help with that, because for especially a large organization, I mean, Home Depot is 500,000 associates strong, over 35,000 veterans. I can't keep that on a list of scratch pad in my office, right? So I have to be able to go into the system and pull that information. So encouraging veterans to get involved with those lists. And then once you have veterans who are self-identifying, using that to engage them. So there's a couple of military major months, obviously. So Veterans Day in November, and then also May is Military Appreciation Month, which also includes Military Spouse Appreciation Day and Memorial Day. We do engagement across the organization and internally and externally, where we, last year, we were really happy. Our CEO signed a card for all of our veterans across the organization and we shipped it out to them at their store. So every veteran who had self-identified received a card from the CEO of Home Depot thanking them for their service. And then something similar, we launched the line of like Home Depot branded veteran gear. So polos, t-shirts, hats, things that our associates can wear. A lot of the stores and a lot of the leaders took that in partnership with their HR partners, were able to, give out some of these items to veterans or military spouses during these events to, say thank you and to drive engagement and help them with the, hey, you have the Home Depot identity, but you also have the veteran identity. And then there's the other basic stuff that a lot of our organizations do. You'll see a lot of it on social media. But I mean, they'll have luncheons or breakfasts for associates when it was safe prior to COVID, and we're able to do gatherings. We used to have a veterans breakfast for our different offices around the United States. Whenever Veterans Day came up, we do Memorial Day events. We do service events where we go and work on, through other partnerships, work on fixing and improving veteran homes for veterans who might have been catastrophically wounded during their service. We'll go through and help make their home able to accommodate their unique medical needs, and you start building camaraderie there. And that's what I feel a lot of veterans they desire when they get out, because you always had a mission and a purpose when you're in the military, and sometimes that can be hard to translate when you go out into this in the corporate workforce. But when you start building that community and that identity, you start building those bonds, and you kind of get your own little miniature ERGs across organizations, and the larger ERG helps with disseminating that information. So really excited about that. Glad that question was asked.
Greg, do you want to jump in on the ERG question as well?
Yeah, no, we actually have what we call a transition center of excellence, which allows new hires that identify as a veteran, because we're a company of 27,000, almost 28,000, and 30% of our workforce is veterans. So we have a good well in which to draw from. So we have a sponsorship program that's along with that, which fits into that transition center of excellence, which allows that first 6 weeks of a new hire coming in who just transitioned off active duty to figure out the little things like, hey, where do I go for, to sign up for my benefits, or where do I go to find the coffee machine? Where do I go to make coffee? So it's that new hire sponsor. And then after 6 weeks, that individual gets passed over to a mentor that will take them through their entire first year here at Booz Allen. So setting something up like that, I think, is extremely important, and really keeping a pulse on where veterans, their mindset and where things are for them. It is a transition that it can be, a little bit difficult at times for folks, just getting used to being in an office, if it's an office setting, or just kind of, not having that uniform on a daily basis. It can be daunting for some, and being able to have something like we do, our military business resource group, where people can go and we also have internally, we have kind of like a Facebook page. It's called Yammer, where folks are sharing ideas and really, they can go for just different resources, different questions they have, whether it's about reserve duty, guard duty, whatever the case may be. It's an open forum, and folks are more than willing to help out.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, I'd like to add a little bit to that. I think it's very important to connect your new veteran employees, with your current veteran employees, whether it's a mentorship program or just like a casual, hey, let's grab coffee by the cafe, something like that. But it's very important to at least like make that connection, to let them know like, hey, we know that this might be new for you. And here are a list of people that you can contact. You get to pick who. Like, we're not going to assign them to you, right? This is in the military. You get to pick who you want to connect with, and then connect with them and ask them any questions that you have, right? The majority of them are not going to be in your on your leadership team, so don't feel like you have to, or you can't ask some of the questions that maybe you don't feel comfortable asking your leadership team. So we have a website on like our intranet, so it's called Connect. And you can find all of your local leadership for the veteran employee resource groups. So ours is called Stryker's Veterans Association, so SVA. So you can find the leadership for your local chapter there. And then we also have a list of volunteer mentors that have raised their hand and said, hey, I will talk to, you know, any incoming veteran who would like to talk about whatever it is that they want to talk about. We do also have, we've also built onboarding classes specifically for military. So we have several different ones that talk about, you know, office etiquette for one, learning the business, right? Showing them the org chart, how it's different, you know, showing them how the hierarchy works here at Stryker. All of those financials, difference between financials, right? Like make sure, and benefits, how to pick your benefits, if you're using VA, if you're not using VA, right? All of those things. So those are actually onboarding classes that we've built to be like live in person. So twofold: one, obviously they get to learn their information, and two, they get to meet another veteran already, you know, through these onboarding classes. So that's very important as well. And we run these onboarding classes for all of our interns coming into Stryker. So not full-time hires, but through the military internship programs. And then also our full-time hires as well. And we also have, I think, the little things, right? It's really the little things that will keep your veterans at the company. Like for Veterans Day, we made a Veterans Day video with all of our executive sponsors for the SVA. And then we asked our CEO also to make a statement to be included in the video. So that goes a long way. It shows that leadership cares about this specific group of people who are at the company, and that there's effort, you know, put behind it to make sure that they're recognized for the hard work and for their service to the country. So there are all sorts of different things. And then also think about like your philanthropic branch. So who your company donates money to says a lot about the mission and who you care about. So that's also one way to make sure that specific groups of people are feeling included within your company. And then the last thing is we've started doing consistent lunch and learns through the SVA. So we would have a veteran leader within our company come and give, you know, his or her leadership experience that they've had in the military and how it translates to their career here at Stryker. So it shows our not just our incoming, but everyone, including non-veterans, you know, how experience in the military can help them be successful as Stryker. So again, two birds, one stone, right? One is, okay, so now hiring managers are like, oh, I never thought about how that experience in the military can translate to help them here at Stryker in this role that is totally not related to the military. And then the other thing is, your veterans now will be able to see, okay, my values and my experiences are appreciated here at the company, and I can take those experiences, use them, and make it to a senior level here at the company.
JJ, you mentioned your mentorship program, and I know companies in general tend to struggle with how you structure, how do you implement an effective mentorship program, not just for veteran employees, but for any underrepresented or marginalized group. Is anybody else here doing a specific mentorship program within your organization?
Yes,
Chris, you are?
yeah, definitely. And it maps back to the ERG. The ERG takes on ensuring that new military hires have a mentor. Mm-hmm. And it's, you know, more or less 12 months. Get through that first year. Sometimes we find that the individual on his or her team already will have a mentor, and that's fine. But the idea is that we want to make sure that military hires are taken care of. Now, one of the foundational things that we do with MSSA is we have mentors for every cohort. We have 60, for example, participants in the 4 cohorts that are ongoing now, and we have 94 mentors for them. And what we do is we have a mentor for soft skills, if you will. Hey, what's it like to work in a technology company? What's it like to work at Microsoft? And another one for tech skills. 2 mentors for every cohort. And they go in once a week for about an hour, answer questions. And through the course of the 17 weeks, that relationship between, those that are going to potentially come to the company and Microsoft, that relationship becomes very strong. So the whole idea of mentoring, not only for the company, but for any of the programs the company stands up for military people, it's a very worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah, and Emily, to contribute to that, I'd say that mentorships can take different types of vehicles as well. So what Chris just described, where we have technical mentors in those, we do something very similar with like our fellowship programs when we're bringing them in. But also, I think where a lot of companies struggle is they try to find a one size fits all for all parts of the organization. So I might have an associate who is joining, a military veteran, 3 years of service, joining as a cashier in a store in Boise, Idaho. Do I have time, or do I have the ability to reach all the way down there and then align them with somebody else? That can get very complicated. But what we've done a lot of times, we empower our HR teams with policies and resources that they can leverage to be a bit more localized. So that cashier that comes in, as part of all of our new hires, they get assigned an associate coach. And that's to help them learn as they join the company. Well, we just said, okay, well, you know what? We already do associate coaches for all associates that are coming in. Little caveat here. If they're a veteran who's joining this team, how about we align them with an associate coach that is a veteran? And on top of that, here's an intro website that has a lot of resources they can then go through and leverage so they can pull that in. So some of our stores have, dozens of veterans working at them. Some only have 3 or 4. And so for those stores have 3 or 4, making it easy to gain that access where it's not too cumbersome, because they're busy. They're trying to do their jobs, right? And if we add one more thing onto the plate, it can be overwhelming at times. But if you make it easy and you can kind of scale it across the organization, then you can gain that success. Because I just got done talking to one of our VPs. He joined the company as a key cutter years ago, fresh out of the Navy, and now he's a VP of stores across the Chicago region. That's what he talks about. You don't have to have this super in-depth, cumbersome process. Sometimes all it takes is a handshake and a smile. That can become a mentorship program, a willing ear to listen, and then that can grow into something, and that career can take off from there.
Dave, sorry, I was on mute.
Well, I have to tell you that I've served on a lot of panels, and the comments, especially about ERG and spouse and military spouse hiring, this is the best panel I've ever been involved with, and the most complete information. There's 3 or 4 times I was going to jump in, and things have been covered. I'm going to restate something and try to encapsulize it. It's important with your employee resource group. You have to have a centralized entity, but you have to reach down to the local, as Chuck is talking about. The more easily identifiable veterans are across your entire company, the more you're going to have an informal mentor process that exists in space. You can have a formalized one, but those things don't always work. But if you have an informal network where somebody can clearly recognize other veterans who've been with the company, just by having that and having that outreach within your company, not talking about new hires, you create a community and a belonging that some people are unaware of. I think was it Chuck or Greg? I think Chuck talked about identifying your veterans. There are a lot of things you can do to figure out who your veterans are within your company, and this is very important. I've worked with companies, and we once employed a program where we issued challenge coins to veterans working for us. Those challenge coins were all connected to our company, had all the services represented on it, and they were directly connected to a veteran identifying themselves within our personnel systems, and then they would be issued and by handshake in the way they're supposed to be, by someone high up in the food chain, wherever, whether it be down at a local area or at the corporate headquarters. We had the CEO standing out there and issuing 700 challenge coins in one day, and shaking the hand of every single veteran and looking in the eyeball and thanking them from the service. Well, as soon as that happened, the group I was responsible for got 4,000 inquiries about why they didn't get their challenge coins. And then said, well, you got to go through. See, there he is. See, Chuck just showed, U.S. veteran. They clearly have a way of identifying who the other veterans are. I remember a group that wasn't able to participate for whatever reason in the challenge coin session. We got up and we traveled 4 hours and walked in the door to this maintenance crew. We got people who've been with the company 30 years that came out of Vietnam who never identified themselves as a veteran. And after we did these campaigns, they finally identified themselves as a veteran. And we handed coins to grown men who are Vietnam era veterans, and Greg's shaking his head, and I think everybody's been who cried, and they've been working for the company 30 years. And they all of a sudden realized that this new hire over here that was just in Iraq or in Afghanistan had real connectivity with this old guy over here that's been with the company for 35 years. And what we saw was increase in retention in all those segments across the board because they had a informal mentorship that was already put in place. So I'm not really changing or adding much to what's already been said. I'm just trying to put it together. Both things work: formal mentorship and using the VERG or the employee resource grouping to clearly identify who the other veterans are. And I'm telling you, it will pay dividends across the board.
We've gotten a couple questions that are related to some programs that you're that you guys have mentioned or specific sites that you run. So we'll go through a couple of these quickly because I think these are valuable. JJ, you mentioned Stryker's Military 101 education program. It's not for only recruiters or talent acquisition. You're opening it up to other people in your organization. Okay, I see you nodding. Do you ever make that available to people outside your organization? And if not, does anybody here know of a similar program that would be available just to any third party who wants to partake?
Yeah, so unfortunately, like our Military 101 is built specifically for Stryker. So it is not available to outside, but there are a lot, like Psych Armor, for example. They have a lot of military education. I think SHRM might have some Veterans at Work certificate, for example, which I think that certificate uses Psych Armor for education. So yes, there are definitely training material out there that are available to everybody.
Thank you. We have another question about we briefly mentioned the government-sponsored internships. Could someone just say the names of, I think Skillbridge is one of them, is that right?
What are other corporate fellowship program?
Okay, are there any others that viewers should check out?
So Skillbridge is the one that is the actual Department of Defense program, but Hiring Our Heroes is they leverage Skillbridge sometimes and they have their own partnership. That's another great one.
Yeah, it's run by Chamber of Commerce.
Yep. And then it's not necessarily a internship program, but it's one that we've had a lot of success with is American Corporate Partners, where they go through and they connect members who want to mentor veterans getting out for a year-long mentorship program. We find that's a really good way for associates to give back to military community. But let's be honest here, I've hired 3 out of the 5 last proteges that I've been working with at Home Depot, because as you get the chance to talk with them and everything else, you create a pipeline understanding that way as well. And the ones we didn't hire managed to find great opportunities at other companies. I actually think one might have gone to Stryker. That's something JJ and I might want to talk about later on. But that's another great way to get involved and to bring in people as well. And maybe not an internship capacity, but in a mentorship capacity.
And Psych Armor, is it PSYCH? Is that, am I hearing that correctly?
Yep.
Okay, Armor, thank you.
Emily, I put in the chat, I put in the link to the fellowship and partnership program, as well as there's a toolkit that the SHRM has, which is pretty valuable as well. I put that link in the chat also.
That's great. And we just have a few minutes left. So this is more of a yes or no question for Chris. Do you know if the MSSA program covers digital media skills? No. Okay, that's a no. And then do you know if it works with state agencies? You're on mute.
We're connected with state agencies, but that's not a go or no-go relationship. The program runs, especially now that we're virtual, the relationship with state agencies, we have them, but that's not a necessity for the program the way we're running it now. Same as we used to have MOUs with all the military installations where we had the program. No longer a requirement. As long as we have an MOU with OSD, Skillbridge, people can participate transitioning military or veterans from wherever they are on the planet.
Thanks. So we're just about out of time. Before I kick it back over to Nick, I apologize if we weren't able to get, we certainly weren't able to get to everybody's questions. They were very good. So I hope we covered some good points. Thank you very much to all of our panelists for being so generous with your time and knowledge. And of course, thank you very much for your service. And now back to Nick.
Thanks so much, Emily. And thanks again to our wonderful speakers. And thanks for your service here on this panel. And of course, in general, that was a great conversation. Thanks again to our sponsor, Fastport, and to all of you for participating today. If you'd like to join us for more virtual events, you can head to our website. That's fromday1.co and check out more of our upcoming webinars. Tomorrow, Thursday, July 8th, the need to exceed, harnessing motivation within ultra high performance teams. On Tuesday, July 13th, recruiting in the vast labor pool created by remote work. On Thursday, July 15th, the future of telehealth in a post-COVID-19 world. And on Wednesday, July 21st, as mentioned a few times, we're doing our monthly full-scale virtual conference. These monthly conferences have panel discussions, workshops, and networking in addition to discussions like you saw today. The focus for this one in July is diversity's many roles, how mentors, sponsors, and allies each play a part in inclusion. Visit our website at fromday1.co to learn more about all those upcoming events. And like I said, there's a link in chat. It's still there if you'd like to claim your free ticket, thanks to today's sponsor for our July virtual conference. Thanks again to everyone who participated today. It was an amazing discussion, one of the best we've had, like Dave said. So thanks for participating and stay well.